What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Watch It in Action. I'm BouseFeenux, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Opticor. The Opticor is a corpus laser cannon that features extremely high base damage. It deals high puncture damage when fully charged and has the third highest base damage of all non-archwing weapons in the game. This weapon also features extreme ammo efficiency, pinpoint accuracy, and a small area of effect around the surface that the beam connects with. On top of all that, the range of the laser is infinite, unlike other beam weapons, and is also basically hitscan, which means that you won't have to lead your targets when firing like you would with a bow or any other launcher type weapon. As for the negatives of this weapon, the Opticor has extremely low charge time that has to be compensated for with charge rate and fire speed mods, which take the place of mod slots that could be used for other utilities like more damage. Also, the weapon can be tricky to use because if the charge is interrupted or released too early, it could cause the weapon to what's called jam, and the charge time to restart. Basically, jamming is when the weapon just kind of shuffles almost. It's kind of awkward to use. The charge time gets kind of messed up, and that's kind of tricky to get around. But when you use this weapon a lot, you kind of figure out how to get around that. But lastly, and most importantly to me, and this is a huge thing, I think this is really important, you'd think that a giant freaking laser would have an 8 punch through, but it doesn't. For some reason, this weapon does not have an 8 punch through, and you have to compensate with that for mods. But fortunately, I've taken into account these problems, and the build that I've put together kind of addresses a lot of this stuff. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, so this is kind of a hefty build. It requires about 5 Forma to be able to fit this build exactly, and that's going to get you a heavy caliber, which is going to increase our damage by 165% at a cost of accuracy. The cool thing about this weapon is it basically has pinpoint accuracy, and heavy caliber has almost no effect on this thing. It's really cool to use this because heavy caliber is just going to give us a ton of damage basically for free. Serration is basically another heavy caliber without the accuracy debuff, essentially, and we're going to need that on there. We're going to pretty much use that on every build we have, so no brainer there. We definitely need Serration. Split chamber is going to give us multi-shot, which basically allows us to fire 2 lasers, and if you stray from side to side really quickly, you can actually see that a second laser is being fired with it, which is really kind of cool. So that's going to add to our damage. We definitely want to have that on there. No reason to not have it. Shred is a mod that actually solves 2 problems. So you need a lot of fire rate on the Opticor to make it charge faster. See, we got our charge time under a second here, but without all these fire rate mods, so we're using Vial Acceleration, Speed Trigger, and Shred. That's pretty much all the fire rate mods for rifles. We need all of them, otherwise this thing is abysmal and really, really hard to use. So Shred is going to give us increased fire rate, and it's going to solve that punch-through problem for us. So this mod is amazing to have on here. I highly recommend it. I would not switch this out with anything else. That punch-through is going to be really, really useful for a weapon that fires as slowly as this does. Definitely want to have that. Speed Trigger is just going to be another mod that's going to increase our fire rate. Gotta have it. Without fire rate mods, this thing is extremely slow. Now, you can pile on as much DPS as you want. You can get rid of these speed mods. But honestly, having these speed triggers, the Shred, the Speed Trigger, the Vial Acceleration, that's going to make your life so much easier. And then lastly, we have space for 1 combined elemental, so you can use Radiation, Viral, Corrosive, whatever you want. You can put it on here, you can have this. Another note that I didn't realize until just before I was going to make this video, I can't believe I never noticed this before, but you can actually use Firestorm on this. And that improves the blast radius of the little area of effect when the weapon actually hits a surface. Now, keep in mind that area of effect is going to diminish the further you are from a target. So the further you are away from something, the lower area of effect you're going to have when this weapon connects with the target you're shooting at. So the other thing to notice too is that the weapon actually staggers whatever target it hits, regardless of how fully charged it is. So all that taken into consideration, let's check out the stats real quick, and then we'll test this thing out on the firing range. So we got the charge rate all the way down to less than a second, which is really good. That's owed to these fire rate mods. Vial Acceleration is the last one you're going to need on here. That's going to decrease your damage by 15%, but it's going to increase your fire rate by 90%, which is totally worth it, especially since this thing has such high base damage. The critical chance is pretty low, 15%, not really worth modding for, especially we need all these speed mods on here, so there's really no room for it. Low critical multiplier. Fire rate is really low at 2.8. Magazine size is 5. Now, this thing uses rifle ammo, and it only uses 5 rounds in a magazine, and the low fire rate means that essentially you're going to have infinite ammo. I've never run out of ammo with this thing. I don't even think I've ever dropped below 500 ammo with this thing, ever, and I use it quite a lot. It is a loud weapon. The wiki does say that it's quiet. I haven't actually tested that, but I'm pretty sure that this thing is alarming. The reload is 2 seconds, which is really good for a small magazine size, so we get that 2-second reload, which is great. And then, you know, kind of a 26% status chance. That's going to be owed to that split chamber there mostly. The split chamber is going to give us a lot of inflated status on that. I would not recommend putting status mods on here. You're just going to lower your DPS. So the one thing we do notice, though, is the puncture damage is very high. 6,000, you know, without any puncture mods. That's just the serration and heavy cal bringing that up. And then we have 14,000 combined elemental damage. That's insane. This thing scales really, really well with elemental damage. We've taken a look at the stats. We've taken a look at the mod builds. Let's go ahead and show this thing in a controlled environment here. I want to show this against some pretty tough enemies. We're probably going to use some corrupted heavy gunners or something like that. Something really beefy. So I'm going to spawn a few of those real fast. I am going to use Chroma, which is going to inflate our damage numbers a little bit, but you should still get an idea of how much damage this thing is really capable of and just the sheer destructive power of it. So let's go ahead and right away start laying into these guys. So only about 1,600 damage. Like I said, I'm using radiation, which is probably not the best element for these guys, but you do see that it staggers them, and the range for the weapon is very, very far. Unlike any other beam weapon, we can go really far with it. But I like this weapon a lot. I tend to use it a ton. You know, it's a pretty solid, super powerful weapon. It performs really well in a lot of situations. Highly accurate, very powerful, a lot of fun to use if you can get around some of the little quirks the weapon has, but I really like it. I highly recommend picking this up if you haven't tried it yet. Throwing a build on it, testing this build out, and if you guys have any other builds, let me know in the comments. This is a build that I've tested a long time, and I found it to work really well, but if there's anything better out there, I'm always all ears to know if you guys got something cool out there you've been working with. So let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. Also, you can find the full text write-up and build of this weapon on BouseFeenux.com. Don't forget to visit there, and if you do, make sure you turn off your ad block, because that helps me out a ton. I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Thanks a ton.